Coming up today on Locked On at Texas Tech, is Grant McCasland being targeted for another job? It's the latest from the Worry Report in West Texas. Next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you, my man. We are inching closer to another game day as the Red Raiders are back in the LBK. So not there just yet, however. So we're pondering some bigger picture subjects here today. I do want to get to actually a conversation I was having with a Matador mobster texting back and forth after you and I discussed a little bit of the shallowness or the depth whenever it comes to the rotation for Texas Tech we have seen so far on yesterday's show. And I and our guy Dennis in the Matador mob were texting about building for March. What a roster would actually look like if you had your druthers in order to be successful whenever the tournament actually rolls around. Because I think over the years you've seen some things that maybe the tournament kind of lends itself more so to, as far as where teams are geared inside, outside, whatever it may be. So I want to pose that question to you that we were discussing. Also want to get something that's gotten some attention over the last few days, and I'm sure we'll continue to, because we hope to see Grant McCasland continue to have success. So he will be mentioned within some reporting, suggesting targets to programs or identified as a target by a program that could be hiring a head coach here or there. So we'll get to that. But just wanted to kick off the conversation, Chris, in the land of the Associated Press poll. New one out, and Texas Tech is the 12th ranked team in the nation. And this on the heels of a loss. So kind of processing exactly how that came to be. I know there were some other L's taken by highly ranked teams across the nation over the weekend. And this is something we saw just a couple of weeks ago with the Houston Cougars after they were beaten on their home floor. And then I think they rose actually in the next poll. So I don't know, is it a credit to the opponent? Is it a credit to the league or to Texas Tech? Is it just a byproduct of scores elsewhere? What did you make of the Red Raiders getting a little closer to the top 10?
Yeah, I mean, I while in one, so out of one side of my mouth, I'll say, hey, just keep in mind, this is kind of meaningless, and this isn't like a thing that you can really sink your teeth into. However, the other side is, as I told you before we started the show off the air, it's not like you've been walking around on planet Earth for too many weeks going, my Red Raider basketball team's ranked 12th in the country or better. It's not a lot of hadn't happened just a whole lot. So it is a big deal. And I think the rise, based on, even though you're coming off of a loss, I think also it makes a great point in that I think that a lot of fans, and maybe us too, you get caught up in it going to Tucson and you lose, but you forget that win over Baylor was a pretty big one, and I think that's why you rose this week in this situation. Now, granted, you've got landmines on your schedule for the next couple of weeks coming up, and you drop any of these and you will give a lot of this equity back, or a lot of these good vibes. The data will reflect poorly on you dropping one of these games. But I think that this says a lot about whether it's eye test and that you played Arizona close for the most part, or that you beat Baylor. Either way, I think you're probably getting some credit for either one of those. And again, there were some things that happened in front of you, but it's a nice sign of respect. But again, back to the other side of the mouth, it doesn't really mean anything. Like it's fun. We're talking about it now. The other important things are you're still ninth in net and in KenPom, right around there. You didn't really move anywhere, even though you dropped one by 9 points in Tucson. You that's where you stayed. Again, these other games, these other teams you're about to play, your numbers are going to drop just a bit, even if you win, just because it factors in strength of schedule and all these things. Whereas you go lose at Arizona just by the fact of playing these guys where you played them, you get a lot of credit for that. But playing and you'll get some credit for what you hope to get done in Stillwater or Fort Worth, but Arizona State or West Virginia, not real sure what that looks like. So anyways, but 12th ranked Red Raiders, and you move up even though you lose. Hadn't happened a whole lot, but there's a first time for everything.
I know you're right when you're talking about what it actually tangibly means for the basketball team, but at the same time, the meaning behind it is not lost on me as a Tech basketball fan, and thinking about where we have come from. And say, I don't know, the day that we found out Chris Beard is leaving town, from then to right now, and you're the 12th ranked team in the country, it's kind of wild to think about what you've kind of endured as a program, because we also know in the midst of that was a meltdown as the Mark Adams era came to an end. So, I mean, bizarre sequences after you rose to the pinnacle of college basketball, and you're thinking, I'm sure like any fan anywhere in the nation would think, after you lose the head coach, are we ever going to be back on any kind of radar? You actually, with the next guy, remain on the radar. You make a run to a Sweet 16, and then we know how that concludes, and you think, are they even going to let us in the same room as the radar? Where is the radar? So you hired Grant McCasland, and I think we all have very high hopes, and certainly his track record justifies some high expectations for what he can do. I think he's setting winning percentage records at every stop he's made so far for those schools. So we expected great things, but I'm not going to overlook or take for granted the fact that you have endured this kind of path, and you sit here as we hit the middle of February or close to it, and you're the 12th ranked team in the country. Like you said, there ain't been many 12th ranked Red Raider teams just roll through, regardless of whatever era. So a credit to all those who are making a hand and making that happen with Coach McCaslin and his staff, and certainly the Jimmies and Joes on the floor, Chris. But I think, as you point to, this upcoming stretch, and we talked about it a little bit on yesterday's episode, more so along the lines of opportunity, like, hey, get out here and stack some wins. But you're right, man. The L's, if you were to take any of them, would be deducting a lot of points from your so-called score.
And they're just not going to be easy to get. But yeah, back to your point, I could even go back a bit further, because I think this is like I don't know if we call this like a golden era that you're in the midst of right now. But when you talk about, but I think so. It's as close to it as you can possibly get, even though there's been a hiccup or two in the midst of this little era, as you just documented. But eight years in a row where you've been ranked at least one time in the AP Top 25. So that's why I refer to this little stint as a bit of a golden era. And I'll even go back to the first year I ever did this. Like I say, did this as in like broadcasting with the team and everything. It was supposed to be a Gillespie coached team. It ended up being a Chris Walker coached team. And I think it was a 1-17 conference record. And you were arguably the worst, or one of the worst Power 5 teams in the country at the time. And to think that there was some era to be had on the horizon with various different coaches, mind you, and the fact that you've been ranked these 8 seasons in a row, a Final Four appearance, an Elite 8 appearance, multiple NCAA tournament appearances, and all that stuff, it is pretty crazy. I mean, it really is. And that's why I think some view this job differently, and we need to get into the conversation about Grant. We can transition, but this is a good job, and some look at it differently than others. NIL has changed it a bit. Facilities have changed it a bit, but this is a good job, and it wasn't always a good job, but it is now.
Oh, yeah. And still inherently has its own challenges, like every job does. But certainly a lot of things have changed as far as the context of leading a men's basketball program in Lubbock. So talking about that leadership and talking about the job, and we were talking a moment ago about some transitions with leadership in some years gone by, I think still leaving Tech fans a little edgy. Maybe we're just an edgy bunch in general. I don't know. But a little edgy, and understandably so. But, Chris, when you win games, you get attention. People want you to come be their guy when they're looking for another guy. And we'll have that go around again within this offseason, or this kind of hiring cycle upcoming. I have not really seen a whole lot of tangible suggestion that, hey, he's being pursued. Grant McCasland is being pursued by this or that. I see a lot of speculation or even recommendation, like this is the list of guys this program should be looking at. Things along those lines as far as some national conversation is concerned. But just wanted to touch on that because we were also discussing it with Matador Mobsters as well as the Indiana search, I guess, that is forthcoming has gotten a lot of attention. And clearly, I think Grant McCaslin, well-respected, highly thought of in this industry, so not surprised if he does wind up as a target here or there. But what do you make in general of, I guess, the state of Grant McCaslin as we sit here now in 2025, following what was an interesting little window with Scott Drew and Baylor and all that not too long ago? And I guess Indiana specifically, if there is anything to add, would love for you to do so. But in general, the thought of McCaslin being targeted and or what kind of interest he may have if there were some of those things to open up, and definitely want to leave you some room to discuss the lack of interest, if that's also appropriate. What do you think, man? Because I know this stuff can change really quickly. First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. And when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. And FanDuel's live betting feature electrifies every moment. Whether backing your team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch shot, you're never going to miss your chance to get in on the action. Plus, the app, easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. And make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
I first had somebody reach out to me, I don't know, week and a half ago. I think it was prior to the Houston game. And they were like, hey, man, it sure looks like North Carolina is going to fire Hubert Davis, or that's a lot of the talk. Surely they wouldn't go after Grant. And I just rolled my eyes. I'm like, I'm not prepared to deal with all this right now. Like, it's just stop it. Like, stop the game, the worrying, the whatever, like just putting it into the ether was like my deal. It was just like, and then this Indiana thing happens with Coach Woodson, and they are, obviously going to move on. And I see Grant's name get mentioned multiple times in multiple different places in various different ways, as I think you suggested. I don't know if I've seen it yet where it said, this is their targeted list. It's more of, hey, these people would be fits. These are the people they should talk to. I mean, the field of 68 guys. I think various folks on CBS and on, the folks that cover the sport. And a lot of speculation led to Dusty May, who just got the job at Michigan. Sorry, Michigan. He was once a ball boy for Bob Knight back in the day at Indiana. He's got ties, but he just got the job at Michigan, and so the timing would be strange. I thought another name that was interesting, Ben McCollum, should ring a bell.
Yes, it does.
T.J. Otzelberger's name getting mentioned, but Grant McCaslin's name was showing up in a variety of different places. So let's just take it head on. Do I think he's going to be the next head coach at Indiana? No, I do not. However, let's talk through it a second. As Mike Leach used to say, there's two lists to be on. This is clearly the better one to be on. You want to be wanted. You don't want to be like, okay, who's on the hot seat? Okay, so Grant's checked that box. He's on the right list. He just signed a contract extension. So he's making, on average, a little over $4 million a year for the next. I think it's up until 29 and 30. So it's way off into the distance. I think there's a buyout number that's going to be between $6 to $9 million if somebody were to, and it kind of comes down just a little bit every year that he's here. So I'm clear. Indiana, if they wanted to, they can pay all that money. They can pay him more. They could pay the buyout. They can do whatever they wanted. that's the scary part about how much more money the SEC, the Big Ten, and I don't know anything about Indiana's finances. I'm just speaking in general.
Yeah.
Those two leagues get so much more TV money. They've got way more money to make hires or make things go away or fix problems quicker and just buy their way out of a scenario. And so that money, I don't think would scare them if they were to choose to spend it. However, I think Tech, I don't want to say like dodge the bullet, but Tech has already maneuvered their way through the scariest scenario with Grant McCaslin, and that was Baylor. That's where he played. It's where he went to undergrad. And obviously he's got lots of ties to Texas Tech, and his wife does too, and all that. But maybe just slightly more tie to Baylor because he was on, and then he comes back and he's an assistant coach under Scott Drew, But I go back to the last couple of weeks when he talks about the students here, and he's used the phrase, well, in Texas and here in our state. And when he's kind of talked about, there's nothing like it. And he's right. I mean, like whether it's Houston or Baylor or A&M or this is what we've talked about some. And so I think he's seeing firsthand what a good job this is right now. And again, maybe there was something 5 years ago that would have been a miss pre-Womble facility, pre-ability to utilize NIL to where it's like, okay, this isn't. But see, now the playing field is a lot more equal, and you have a lot of advantages because you can the ability to with the revenue sharing or NIL, and then you've got a facility, and then you've got a student crowd that really cares in masses. So I think his name is going to continue to get mentioned at places. Do I think a lot of it is real, whether it's North Carolina or Indiana? And again, somebody may show up and they may just write him or offer him so much money, but I just don't know if I'm ready to get into all that just yet with everything based on a brand new contract. I don't know. We'll kind of see, but it's a fun conversation to have because it means your guy that's here is doing really, really well. Do I think he's given it an ounce of thought about being the next head coach at anything other than playing Arizona State, tomorrow night? No, I don't. And then he's got an agent and all the things, but I've learned, you don't just totally dismiss any of this stuff.
No,
but there's a lot of odds stacked in your favor in this one. So we'll see. I mean, could it equal, if they were to hone in, could it equal another potential extension or another this or that? I don't know. And we'll just see because you're not even anywhere through this season yet. We've just got a long way to go. And that's the thing is like none of it, like within Indiana, you're not going to play it out in many cases until, late March or April, which feels like way off into the distance. So anyway, I felt, I think you're the one that brought it up and was like, hey man, should we? And I was like, man, I've seen that a lot, but I just want to, I think he's a really good fit in Lubbock, Texas. And I think he knows it and all that. But, sometimes things change. I just don't know if they're going to change this soon. Go back and look at his quotes on the contract extension when it was asked about Baylor. And he was just like, I don't know if there's a school out there that I'd leave this place for at all, regardless if it's that one or whatever. And we know his ties to Baylor. The best way I saw it put was Texas Tech should be concerned if Indiana all of a sudden relocated inside the state of Texas. Guess what? That's not happening. He's a state of Texas guy. He has everything here that he needs to win at the highest level. And that's what you want as a head coach. I mean, what is he? Help me with the math here. I think he's 20-10 in his Big 12 games here. That's the combined record between last year going 11-7 and now 9-3. He's 20-10 in his Big 12 games. Salty, man. That is salty. You're winning, 2 for every 1 loss in this league. I mean, come on, man. We've had many conversations like, can you get to 500 in the league? He's 20-10
out of the gates. There ain't no warm-up either. Year one.
Yes. I mean, so the standard is high, the expectations are high, and they'll stay that way. I mean, he's not – this is a year-to-year deal. He's not like, hey, man, I'm going to recruit a bunch of freshmen. Y'all be patient with me. We're going to grow this thing. No, it's not the way this thing's going.
No, certainly not the way that works anymore. And, man, I'm glad you kind of point towards, competing for the ultimate prize or winning at the highest level, because I wanted to wrap up our conversation kind of talking about Texas Tech as currently constructed and how that translates to March and the NCAA tournament. Actually was discussing this with one of our Matador mobsters, our guy Dennis, was asking about essentially how we viewed the Red Raiders in that type of context, and also whether or not that's sort of changed in your view over the years. What wins in March? Because I don't know, I've kind of heard this before, like it's a guards tournament, or it's a big man's tournament, or it's a whatever. So I kind of wonder a couple parts of this question. What, in your opinion, like changes in that format to make it geared towards something that maybe the regular season isn't, or am I just kind of viewing it in the wrong way? And what do you think does win in March these days? Has it changed over the years? And where are the Red Raiders as it relates to being built in such a fashion? What do you think?
I think this is why so many people like your team. But it is absolutely, March is all about your guards. And I just don't know if I ever envision a time where that would change. There are exceptions to it, where it's you got to have a big, you got to have this or that. It will never change or sway from having quality guards. And what I mean by that is, I think a lot of these games have to be managed. It's not about good shooters. That's different. I'm talking about quality guards. Not a bunch of good guards that can score and shoot, which you do have, because typically in March, these games are officiated differently. The TV timeouts are longer. I mean, there's some subtle nuances here that create some differences when you get into tournament play and you get into March Madness and things like that allow for guards to handle their business. But so many times these games come down to IQ and decision making and not turning the ball over
in high stakes, high intensity situations, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. And it's not about, look, you're going to have good guards that miss shots on occasion and that don't have it one night collectively. And that's going to happen. But what you can't have is a collection of guards that mismanages the game or turns it over repeatedly and kind of gives one away, if you will, because it's a one-shot deal. And so that's why Christian Anderson is so impressive, because he doesn't turn it over. He plays really good defense. Look at some of the deflections that he's getting, some of the steals, some of those subtle. Yeah, the shots are there. That's what we're talking about. But his ability to hang with bigger players or whatever defensively, to not blow an assignment, here's you a slight negative is that there was toward the end of the game the other night in Tucson, and you were down, I think 6, and Elijah Hawkins kind of was probing around, and he kind of just shot a floater, and Grant was like, "We need a 3. There's not enough time. We need a 3." And so, that hopefully he learns from that. But collectively, though, you've got a group that just really is good with the basketball. And if the shots aren't falling, they will figure it out. Get to the rim, mid-range, get to the free throw line, whatever. But they're not turning it over in droves. And these guys are all plus defenders. There's no liabilities on defense here. And Kerwin Walton, who has struggled at times with that, he's been replaced at times because of it. And so anyways, that's why I feel pretty good about your team. And you have, so let's just say 2 or 3 of your guys are off. You have 2 or 3 others that can still score. And that's the other thing about your team in particular. You have a lot of ability to score. Some teams don't. And that's the thing about the next 3 games in particular that you're about to play: Arizona State, Oklahoma State, and TCU. They struggle to score. It's a bit difficult. If you don't turn it over and give them points in transition, they will struggle to score. You will want to guard those teams, slow them down a bit, make them execute at half court, and don't give them anything, and then you'll keep them in the 60s or 50s. This is just who they are. They don't have a lot of juice and all that. You do. You can score in the half court. You can run up and down the floor. You can do all kinds of different things, and a variety of different guys can do it. And you've proven that. I mean, you got into the 80s in Houston, Texas. So anybody that says, I don't know if you scored in the 80s in Houston, Texas, the end. So anyways, that's what my answer would be on. It's a guards game. It's going to stay that way, and that's why it's so important. Don't turn it over. Take care of your business, manage the game, and it's not all about scoring, but figure out ways what your team needs and all those things, and not giving anything to the opposition is paramount. That's why all those, so many times those mid-majors with those old group of senior guards, they just get teams repeatedly in March Madness, and you're like, damn, my bracket's all jacked. Well, I'm not watching South Dakota State every year. I don't know they got like 7 guards that have been there for 12 years each. I didn't know this, right? Yeah. I mean, but this is the point that I wanted to make. And I feel like you've got a pretty good little crew there.
Does it concern you at all thinking about, a shallower rotation, the minutes that some of these guys are being asked to play, and then how that could stack up if you are able to have success and you're playing successive games in a weekend? And obviously there's a little break if you're going between weekends, but is that a concern at all? Or do you think that at that point in time, it's just, kind of throwing that stuff to the wind and everybody's tired, I guess, in one way or another?
It is. I think it is a concern a bit. You just don't know the cumulative effect on your group. Did we see some of that the other night?
Yeah.
I don't know. Because if you think about it, you think about the week that you literally had two of the toughest games anybody would have in this league, and you had them within a week span, and then you mixed in a home game with Baylor to boot, and which wasn't easy. But there's no tougher, based on the standings. Okay, I'm sorry if anybody wouldn't agree with that, but I mean, based on the standings, like in Tucson and in Houston would be the 2 toughest games that anybody would have to face, and you faced, that was within a 7 or 8 day span. Yeah. I do worry if I think your hope here is that in some of these games you will really show up and take care of business when you're supposed to, and you can ease the load off of some of these guys. Maybe not have to play them 35 plus minutes. Maybe it's just 29 or 30, and maybe you can do that multiple times. But that's I'm asking for a lot here. What I'm suggesting is that you just kind of blow some of these teams out so you can rest your guys. It's kind of what I'm right. hinting at, but again, I just don't expect much of this to be easy, because Grant has shown he's leaning on these 8 dudes and 9 if he has to with EY. But it sure would be nice if you could just show up and the other team just didn't care and they let you run a layup drill and you could go. You could get an off day that actually counted. Yeah, but there's some concern there a little bit, but this is just how it is.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I mean, there is just one option that says everybody's gassed, and those that fight through it and deal with it best are the ones that are going to succeed and stay alive in the tournament. All right, good stuff as always, Chris. Appreciate the time and the insights. When we reconvene, we'll be getting ready for a tip as the Red Raiders are back in the LBK as we continue to wage war on the state of Arizona with Arizona State coming to town. So looking forward to getting set for that one with you, and we'll see you then.
Yeah, man. Sounds good. Enjoy the week. Stay warm out there. And we'll talk to everybody tomorrow about the Sun Devils and Bobby Hurley.
That's right.
To that. Yeah. Guns up. Keep hope alive, everybody.
One of the more colorful characters in the Big 12 head coaching cast of All-Stars. Looking forward to him being in the USA. All right, get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thanks to the Everydayers for always being out there, and shout out to the Matador Mob and our guy Dennis for bringing that question to our minds. Thank you, Dennis. If you want to become a Matador Mob insider, hit the show notes to find a link for a free 14-day trial. That's your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text sent straight to your phone. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for the time as always, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.